Hi guys, this is vf.miniatures Warhammer Tactics series, and today I would like to discuss with you the new points updates from the chapter approved 2022 for the Imperium factions. All the Imperium factions bar the Adeptus Custodes. I've already covered them in a separate video. If you are interested in them, please go check it out. You'll probably see the shortcut on your screen right about now. And without further ado, let's start. Surely there's no better faction to open up this video than the Space Marines themselves. As far as I could discern, there were only 3 units that were hit with the nerf bat in this codex. These are the Primaris Chaplain on Bike, the Redemptor Dreadnoughts, and the Volkite Contemptors. Honestly, probably all of these changes are completely justified because the Primaris Chaplain on Bike is one of the best characters in the Codex Space Marines. 20-inch move, huge buffing capabilities, and great survivability for a Space Marine character. And you can put any relic on it like Tannhauser's Bones and make him almost unkillable. So yeah, the 10 points extra that we need to pay for him now, so he'll be 125 with no upgrades and 150 if you will be running him as a Master of Sanctity, which I would probably recommend. Not a huge loss, absolutely manageable and understandable. So let's move on. The Redemptor Dreadnoughts, they are now 185 base, so 190 with the Onslaught Gatling Cannon and the Storm Bolters. It's the loadout that I recommend to run them without wasting 5 points on the Icarus Rocket Pod, which is honestly not that great for the extra points that you pay. This probably was the only change that I did not really expect. Even though the Redemptors are one of the best models in the book, they are only that great when used in certain chapters like the Black Templars or Deathwatch, those that can provide the 5-up and 1 for them, because the 5-up and 1 from the Psychic Fortress is too much of a hassle usually and is not guaranteed. So when you target the Redemptors with dedicated anti-tank weapons like the Entropic Cannons with D3 plus 3 damage, anything that has that high damage potential, not damage 2 or 1 weapons, you'll be killing them pretty easily. So I'm not sure if these 10 points are completely justified, but they're again manageable if you running a diverse army. If you were running a list with 3 Redemptors and 3 Volkite Contemptors, you'd probably be in a bit of trouble right now. So as I've already mentioned, the Volkite Contemptors have gone up by 20 points, so they are 170 base now instead of 150, and you're still paying that extra command point to use the Relic Contemptor, no matter which version you use, the Chaos one or the Loyal one. This change is absolutely justified because the Volkite Culverines were too easy to use. They had awesome 45 inches of range. The profile is very universal, that strength 6 wounds all the targets that you need to wound relatively well. It wounds the light infantry on 2s, heavy infantry on 3s, very heavy infantry on 3s still, and light vehicles on 4s, and anything else on 5s. So in terms of strength, it's a very universal weapon. It has damage 2 for those targets that don't reduce the damage by 1, and mortal wounds for anything else. So yeah, the extra 10 points that you need to pay for each Volkite Culverine are justified and correct. And now to the good news. The Gladiators have all gone down by 15 points. Lancer is 165 now, the Reaper is 195, and the Valiant is 215. And honestly, I'm very happy about that, especially after going to a tournament where I've played 2 games against Tyranids, Crushing Stampede armies full of monsters with 5-up and 1 and -1 damage built in. I feel like the Gladiator is with their 200 points price and not that impressive of an output, they would feel very, very much underpowered in such a game. So yeah, they should cost less. I appreciate how tentatively the Games Workshop are decreasing the prices on these tanks. Obviously they know how many other units we can take for the points, but they don't want the same stuff happen all over again when they think that the unit is very, very underpowered, and they decrease the price by like 40 or 50%, and everyone starts taking multiples of those to tournaments, and they have to increase the price up to a very high level again. And I like to see that the Games Workshop are evolving. That's great news. Same stuff happened with the Storm Speeders. They've gone down by 10 points each. The Hellstrike is 125 now. The Hammer Strike, which is probably the only usable one, is 145, and the Thunder Strike is 150. They still have some big issues in their profile. That's why the price is not the worst thing about them. The worst things are in their datasheet, like their 10 wounds, so they are degradable, which is stupid when the Contemptors have 9 and they don't degrade. Obviously are not core, so they can't have any rerolls, and they have no inbuilt survivability whatsoever. So the only chapters where these are somewhat usable are the Ravenwing, so Dark Angels, and the Black Templars with their inbuilt 5-up-1 for everything that has combat doctrines. Seriously think that these units are waiting for the Space Marine Codex 2.0, where they will be changed in terms of the datasheet and will become very much usable. I think that's what the Games Workshop are planning to do. The Centurion Devastators were nerfed into the ground after the mayhem of the 8th edition, where they had all those Chapter Master rerolls, damage 3 on heavy bolters, and stuff like that. So now the Games Workshop is starting to revive them very slowly, and the first step they took was making them 15 points cheaper, so now they're 85 points per model. I think it's still crazy for a 4-wound infantry model with a couple of heavy bolters, but I guess there may be some uses for these guys still. Now, the things that have not received any discounts are, for example, the aggressors. I have thought that they will be discounted in the new Munitorum Field Manual, because I don't see any aggressors being used outside of some very strange combinations like the Deathwatch Kill Team Strike Force, where they can auto-wound any target for 3 command points. So yeah, I think that the 40 and 45 points per model is a little bit steep, and they probably should be 35 and 40 instead, but unfortunately we didn't see that in this update. Victor Warsuit is another thing that probably needs discount, because if they are not being used, they have non-vulnerable save, no reduction of damage, they are not that great in combat, so probably should cost like 10 or 15 points less, but again, we didn't see that in this update. Now let's try and quickly run through all the Space Marine chapters. It will not probably be that fast, because there are a lot of those, but we'll still try. So the Dark Angels Nephilim Jet Fighter has gone down by 15 points, and now it costs 175. I don't know why you would use this flyer, because the flyer meta has come and gone, and now you won't see any more 4, 5, or 6 playing lists in tournaments or anywhere else, because they are illegal, and I don't think that it's wise to spend 175 points for something that is only great against aircraft. The Dark Talon is 195 points now, so again down by 15 points. I'm not sure again why you would take this flyer, because even though the Rift Cannon is an impressive weapon on paper, I don't see where it would really benefit the list that much, that you would want to spend 195 points, which is one Redemptor worth of points, or half of a Terminator squad. One thing I was very happy to see was that the Black Knights have gone down by 5 points. They are 35 points per model now, or 40 with the Chorus Hammers. They are an iconic unit, and they are very much useful for the Dark Angels, whether you are playing pure Ravenwing or you mix the Ravenwing and the Deathwing. They can be your workhorse for the army in terms of shooting and combat. Of course, they are not that deadly in a fight, especially against targets that reduce damage by 1, but they can still pack a punch, especially if you use them correctly and use the command point Swift Strike to get them out of dodge after they fought. So yeah, I highly recommend to use the Black Knights, especially with the weapons of the Dark Age Stratagem. Their shooting may be very, very deadly, especially if you provide them with rerolls, which I highly recommend. The Grey Knights have also received some interesting buffs and debuffs. The Interceptors and the Dread Knights were nerfed, which was probably very much expected, considering these are the staples of the competitive play for the Grey Knights. The Interceptors are 26 points per model now, and the Dread Knights are 160 and 130 depending on the type. If it's a Grandmaster, it's 160, and if it's regular Dread Knight, it's 130 base. And both versions of the Terminators have gone down by 2 points, so the regular Terminators are at last 40 points, so they have the same cost at last as the Scarabocult Terminators from the Thousand Suns army. It boggled my mind that the Scarabacolts that are better in almost everything than the Grey Knights Terminators were even cheaper than them. And of course, I'm very happy that the Paladins are 45 points each now. They are great models, and considering that they did not receive any special things like they maybe should have, considering that they were the only 3-wound Terminators in the 8th edition, and they've been toned down very much with the new codex. So yeah, 45 points for them feels right. And the same goes for the Interceptors and Dread Knights. I think these changes are correct and justified, and this will provoke the players to build more diverse armies, not consisting of 30 Interceptors and maxed out Dread Knights, 2 Grandmasters and 3 regulars. Terminator suits are something that the Green Knights are known for, so playing with no Terminators on the board, or like one Terminator character and that's it, feels kind of wrong to me, so I like these changes. The Chief Librarian Mephiston has gone down by 15 points, and he costs 140 now. I think it's correct, considering that the Trajan Valoris is 160 now and the Helbrecht is 160, so paying 155 points for a Librarian was odd. There's still this problem that the best, well, one of the best units from the Blood and Juice Codex are the Librarian Dreadnoughts, and you can't take that many HQs in Space Marines army, 3 or 4 tops, and choosing between the Mephiston and the Librarian Dreadnought, I think the choice is pretty much obvious, and it's not in favor of the Mephiston. The Death Company Marines are now 20 points per model, so they have gone down by 2 points. It's absolutely correct, because considering that we can use the Vanguard Vets, the Death Company Marines should cost less, and they can't fall back, they don't have that many attacks, they have non-vulnerable save, so lower price is the only thing that can make them usable compared to the Vanguard Vets. The Death Company Intercessors have also gone down by 2 points. I'm not sure why you would use these guys. They have still the same issues with delivery, they have 6-inch move, they, again, as Death Company, can't fall back, they have poor leadership, I think they're leadership 7, so you can't really take units of more than 5 of these if you don't want to lose a lot of them in morale phase. So I'm not sure that the 2 points decrease in price is covering the innate problems of the datasheet in this case. My favorite Deathwatch have received a single discount, which is one that I'm very happy about. The Corvus Blackstar, honestly, in my opinion, one of the best looking flyers in the game, has gone down by 15 points, so it costs 165 now, and it's an extremely awesome price for something that has a profile of a Storm Raven gunship. Almost the Corvus Blackstar can't carry the Dreadnought, but in terms of the infantry capacity, it's, I think, the same, and you can stick a lot of weapons on it, two weapons less than the Storm Raven gunship, but the Corvus Blackstar now costs something like half of the Storm Raven gunship. So I'm really happy about this flyer, and I think I will be using or trying to use it in my competitive Deathwatch lists. So we'll talk about that in a separate video about the Deathwatch. In the meanwhile, the Deathwatch, of course, were hit hard with the changes in the main Space Marine Codex. The Dreadnoughts that were the staple of the Deathwatch competitive lists cost a lot more now, especially for those Deathwatch lists that were very prevalent in the latest Grand Tournaments, where they had 3 Volkite Contemptors and 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts. So now these lists need to find extra 90 points to do basically the same thing. The Space Wolves, the Wolfguard Vets, which are basically the Vanguard Vets from the Space Wolves army, have gone up by 2 points with their jump back version, so now they cost the same as the Vanguard Vets. It's absolutely correct, because there is no reason in the world why they should cost less than the Vanguard Vets in the other armies, and they are still extremely extremely powerful and very much usable, so no hard feelings there. Thunder Cav are now 45 points each, so 5 points less than they were previously, and it's absolutely correct because they were overcosted for what they could do. They did not have that many attacks, they were not that survivable, and it was hard to protect them. They are not that fast, even though they can advance and charge. They still only have 10-inch move, so their maximum move is 16 inches, which is not bad, of course, but for 65, I think, points that we had to pay for the Thunder Hammer and Storm Shield loadout, it was a bit too much. And the Wolfen may be back. They are down by 2 points each. Their base price is now less by 2 points. And the Thunderhammer Storm Shield loadout is down by further 6 points. So you now only have to pay 30 points for one model with Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, or 25 points for a model with a Great Frost Axe. Love Wolfen, and I was very disappointed when they were hit with a nerf bat so hard that they lost almost all of their survivability, and they only gained the toughness 5, which was obviously not enough to cover all the damage that was done to them, and it was all to repent for the sins they have accumulated in the 8th edition. I guess now the time of their martyrdom is over, so we can again use them in our lists, and a single squad with Thunderhammers and Storm Shields, which is still, I think, the best loadout out there, will cost 145, considering that the champion of the squad, the Sergeant, still has to have the Frost Claws. You can't give him the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. By all means, they are of course not the same Wolfen that we remember from the 8th edition, but they are now usable, and I think many lists can benefit from using a couple of squads, or maybe a single squad of them, in reserves. Now we are finished with the Space Marines at last, and we can talk about other Imperium factions. My favorite Imperial Knights did not change at all, and the only things that have changed are from the Forge World book. These are the Morix's Volkite weapon. I am not capable of pronouncing that second word, and they are now up by 5 points, and I think it's justified because previously they were free, and these are obviously some weapons that should cost something, and 5 points is probably the correct price. These Volkites are a better version of a Volkite Culverin because they have 3 shots less than the Culverin on the Contemptor, but they have AP1, which is something that the weapons on the Contemptors really lack. And the Lightning Locks are also up by 5 points, which is again correct. I am sure that the Games Workshop are doing this on purpose because they don't want us to have access to these universal weapons for no price. Universal, I mean the weapons that are good against any target. They are good against heavy tanks because they have good strength, so they wound at least on 5s, and they have AP and they have a lot of shots. For exactly the same reason they are good against light infantry, because strength 6 is enough to wound the infantry on 2s or 3s, and the AP is enough to bypass most of the armor, and again a lot of shots. So then, yeah, the Lightning Locks should cost at least 5 points for each weapon. Knight Mageura is up by 20 points, and I think it's correct because it has an invulnerable save in combat, which is something that most of the knights lack, and a great shooting weapon and great combat ability. So something that is that multi-purpose and has toughness 8 and 24 wounds should probably cost at least 500 points. Of course, it's obvious that the Imperial Knights Codex is in this strange state where it's waiting for the 9th edition update, so they don't want to change a lot of things right now when the balance is somewhere in the right spot. They have introduced the OPSEC for the Armiger class knights, which is something that I'm very happy about, and I have waited for that for a long time. The big knights count as 10 models for the purposes of controlling the objectives, which is again great. So I don't think we will see a lot for the Imperial Knights Codex of the 8th edition anymore, and we should just wait for the new 9th edition Shiny Codex to come out, and it will probably be somewhere in 2022. Adepta Sororitas, they were hit very hard in this points update because most of the things that are the staple of the competitive play have gone up in points, and we won't be seeing any more of the combined order armies because they are illegal now with the new chapter approved rules. So let's look at what we now have to work with the Adepta Sororitas. Morventhal is up by 15 points, so she's 280 now, and probably it's correct because her profile is very much reminiscent of that of a Rabute Gilliman, and he's a Primarch and he costs much more than she does. So with 4-1 and half damage, 9 wounds, 2-up save and all that, I think 280 is justified for such a character that is also very good at buffing stuff. The Dominion squads that are spewing the mortal wounds like crazy are 14 points each now, and I'm very happy about that, because anything that is capable of dealing mortal wounds that easily should cost more than 12 points per model. Sacrosands are up by 2 points, and again I agree with this increase in price. They have that incredible bodyguard rule that prevents Morventhal from being targeted even when she's the closest unit to the firing model, and they are very tanky. They can stand up for themselves in combat, so yeah, 16 points per model seems right to me. Imperium cherubs are up by 10 points, so they cost 15 points per model now. I again agree with that, because for sisters, which are very squishy, it's very important to deal that overwhelming damage to the opponent when they are out of the Rhino, for example, in the first moment that they are out, until the opponent had a chance to retaliate. So having the choice or the ability to fire the multi-melta again for 15 points is still something that I think the Adepta Sororitas players should consider to pay for. And some good news for the sisters is that their tanks are down by 10 points each now, so the Castigators are 150 base and the Exorcists are 140 or 170 with the big rockets. I hope this change invites more players to explore armies that have more vehicles in them than 2 Rhinos to hide the Dominion and Sacrosanct squads in, and the new prices for the Paragon Warsuits are also something that I was very happy to see. They cost 10 points less each, so 210 points for the squad of 3, and you can only take them in the squad of 3, so 210 for the squad with heavy bolters and 240 for a squad with multi-melters, which is probably the option that I would go for. The sisters are still extremely powerful and very much competitive, and the players that have this army and use it in tournaments should not be worried. They still have all the chances in the world to win games and win tournaments if they use their army correctly. They will have to cope with not being able to mix and match the orders anymore, but I think that's something that the players can manage to overcome, especially considering that we are still waiting for that supplement for the Bloody Rose individuals alone, and there may be some rules that change our perception of how this army works and how important were and are those mix and matching of orders. And the last but not least are the Astra Militarum. The Manticores are up by 10 points, and I think that it shows the new Games Workshop policy on the weapons that can target units that are not visible to the bearer. They are slowly but surely getting rid of those weapons in the game, or making them not that efficient like they have done with the Thunderfire cannon. So paying 10 points more for something that can sit behind the line of sight blocking terrain and shoot old game and targets that it can't see is, I think, justified. Especially considering that you can use the maximum payload upgrade on these Manticores and have straight damage 3 with strength 10 and AP 2, which is incredible. Death Strike is down by 30 points and is completely unusable still. I don't see why you would spend points and force organization slots on something that can literally be useless throughout the game. And the Leman Russ battle tanks are now down by 10 points, which is great, especially considering that they got the 2-up save after the balanced data slate of December 2021. But again, the Astra Militarum Codex is in this weird state, probably even more weird than the Imperial Knights Codex, where it is clearly outdated and needs a lot of changes, and it needs to be updated to the standard of the 9th edition. Some things need to be toned down and some things obviously need to be brought up. So that's it, guys. I hope this video was useful for you. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I hope I haven't missed anything in those screenshots that I was able to find on the internet. If I have, I beg your pardon, and I'll see you next time.